Hello, today I'm going to talk about external login. We start first with login using Facebook account. We will configure our environment to make it possible to log in using any external accounts in this lesson. I'm Nas from Digiterry, let's begin. Let's first take a look at simple external login scenario. The user asks our system to log in with external account. Depending on what he wants, whether it's Facebook, Google or Twitter, we connect with this external system. So it can be any of these, and this system shows the login page for this user. If the user already logged in this system, he will be asked to share his credentials with our system. After the successful response from the user, external system shares the credentials with us. External system is sending his email address, username, and all the data we need to store in our database. If the user does not exist, we add new record in our database and let the user log in. Now let's take a look at implementation part. For the external logins, we will need Yii2 OAuth client extension for our framework. So I just Google Yii2 OAuth client. So we go to GitHub and we go to documentation guide, and we can see here installation and quick start. So we go to installation. We can install it using our composer. Let's navigate to our project and first update our composer. So it's up to date. Now we can update all the extensions we are using. We just say composer update. So it can take a long time, that's why we'll continue after it's finished. So now let's load our extension. So I'll just paste it here. So it's installing also dependencies. And now we can just take a look what happens. Then we should change our configuration. In our components, we will have out client collection. I'll just copy it. We navigate to our project, then we go to configuration and then web. So here we have components. So I'll just paste it here. And we will have here Google and Facebook. We can of course extend it, but for now interesting is Facebook. We will have client and client secret. Let's get them. We go to Facebook developers. We go to Facebook developers and then we go to create new application. We call it Acme. Create. So here comes capture. Oh, I don't see the text. So this is better. EU5 PRT. So now we need actually Facebook login. We're setting it up for web. Now we need a site URL. I just copy our localhost Acme, paste it here, save. So it's saved. Now I go to applications, go to Acme, and I have here application ID and my secret. So I copy application ID and paste it client ID, Facebook ID, and also do it with client secret. Show. Paste it in client secret. So configuration is okay now. We also take a look if we updated if we downloaded our client, OAuth client. As you can see, there's dependencies to HTTP client because we are using OAuth 2. So what's next? We update our configuration, and of course we will need one table. So they here show the user table also, but we already have user table. Let's create only migration for our out table. We go to our bash and then we say Yii migrate create, we call it create table out. Yes, now we can see the migrations. It's here. We can copy what they suggest. So we create the table and then create the foreign key. So it's not safe, but it's safe up. So we are creating out table. As you remember, we are using here unsigned for primary keys. We can just quickly update it. For user ID, we're also using unsigned. And then we use the following names for our foreign keys. We say foreign key, then we say in which table it's out table, which field user ID, and to which table user. So it's which table, which column, to which table, which column, and we here say, as you remember, restrict and cascade. So now while dropping the table and foreign key, so here they are dropping also user, but we are going to drop only this table. Before we drop the table, we should drop the foreign key. This drop foreign key, the name was and in table, and then we drop the table. So the table name is out. So let's create this table. We can just run migration, say view migrate. Yes, one more table is coming to our ECME database. So we refresh it and we can see out is there. Now we need a model. We go to our GE helper. We say we want to create a model. We say which model, so which table, and then we see the out model will be created. We can quickly preview it. We see there is a connection to user table, there are fields, and we can also see the connection get user. So we generate it. We also should update our user model because it has now one more relation to out. So we say user, we say here user, preview, and we can see the changes now. This property is coming. We go to our user model. So this property is coming, and also coming one more relation to our get out. So just copy this. I don't want to override it because as you remember we changed a lot. So we can also delete our user underscore b because we don't need it anymore. Just delete it. And here in user we have one more relation. So for example here. So for models, that's all. Now we have one more table. for our external logins, where we store whether the user was connected with Facebook or Google or Twitter or whatever. Now we can take a look at next steps. So we have here the migration. So with installation it's done. Now we go to the next step. It is quick start. So in this quick start we will create one more component, out handler, which will handle all the requests from the external logins. We will parse the data which we get from external social networks, and it will save it. So first we need the buttons. So we just copy the buttons to log in. So we go to our views, and let's say we want to have it on a login page. So let's say we will have it just next to the submit button. So say it like this. As you can see, it is, if you click on the Facebook or Google button, we will have only two buttons now, because in the components we have only two clients, Google and Facebook. It means only two buttons will be shown, and if you click on any of them, you will be redirected to the site controller out action. So we save it, and let's take a look how it looks like. So we go to our login, and you can see here two buttons. Let's change a bit layout so it looks better. So we say here options. It's options for the div holder from this out. So you can see there's a div. So we will change a bit. We say here it has a class. So we say class, and for example out clients holder. Of course we need the class here, web site CSS, and we create a new class. We say display inline block, for example, and then we say vertical align top. Let's take a look what happens now. So now it looks better. So now if I click on the button, I will be redirected to the site controller out action with client Facebook, because I clicked on Facebook. If I press on the Google, then I will be redirected with out client Google. Now let's take a look at the next steps. So we have here site controller. So in the site controller we will use the out handler. We'll copy it because we will use this component. It's not existing yet, but we will create it later. So I go to site controller. So we also need this one. Then we have here site controller. In actions we will have new element. So we have already here actions. So I have here new element. It's out. So it will catch the action out. So we don't need to have action out because we have already here the actions. So we say here it's using this class, and if the response was successful, we are sending the client to our on out success. And in our on out success, we create it here. We are just creating new out handler. We are sending the client there, and we are calling the handle method. So now let's take a look at our component. So it says here components. I'll just copy everything here, and then we will take a look what does it mean. So I just copy everything. I create a new file here in our components. So the name is out handler. and paste it. So now we say here that this handler is from the namespace app components. Now we can see here it works here also perfectly. We can see that it was created, and we are using here out model, which we created already, and user model, which is connected to out model, and here some array helpers and client interfaces. So as you remember, inside controller in on-out success, we are creating the out handler, new object, and we are giving the client, we are sending the client, which is Facebook or Google or whatever. This one will be set in our local variable, and in this local variable will be now Facebook, Google or something. And then we are calling the handle function. Let's take a look what happens inside. So first of all, they here make a difference if the user logged in or not. In our case, we are putting these buttons or these external logins in login page. It means the user is not logged in. That's why we will just ignore the part where the user already logged in. But if you need it, you can easily change it. So now we have here only if you are not logged in, if you're a guest. So you have here the following. Here you have attributes, get user attributes. We just put here the var dump so we can see what kind of attributes we are getting. So I say here pre and then var dump and then exit. And what kind of attributes we are getting if the user could log in the social network. So I press on the Facebook. So I was redirected to Facebook, and then we can see Acme, which is a project we created in Facebook, and I say okay, continue, and I can see the attributes I'm getting from Facebook. So after I successfully logged in Facebook and I accepted that, I agreed that my data can be sent to Acme, so these attributes will be sent from Facebook. That's all we need. So actually we need the username, we have here the email address, and this is just ID. Let's now take a look what happens. So here we have email address, which is done by getting the email address from attributes with array helper. Then we have ID, and then we have nickname. We call it username because we have username here. And it's not login, but it's name. As you can see here, it's a name, and this will be our username. Here we search for the already external logins for this user because this ID is also unique. First of all, we say this email address must be there, and that's why we check it if email address is empty, then we say here return false. It means the email address will not be empty, and we can go on. So here we have, if we have the external login. In our case, I don't have yet any external logins. I can take a look at my out table, so I can see I don't have any. And in our user, I don't have this user also because I have another email address there. So that's why we'll take a look later. In our case, I don't have the out record, and here I don't have the user. So for now, it's interesting only this part because I don't have anything. I don't have user, I don't have out record. So that's why they do for the following here. So for the user, we create a password because we remember it cannot be empty. So as a username, so we don't have GitHub actually in our user, and here username, we remember it's not nickname, but it's username. So email address and password. And also don't forget to set a status because by default it's 0. It's not activated. Status. And we say here user status active. We say active because we trust Facebook and we trust that this email address belongs really to this user. As you remember, while generating the new user, we are already generating all this stuff. So you can take a look at before validate function in user. Now then we create a transaction. If we can save the user, then we try to save the connected external login. So if we can save it really, so then we commit the transaction because we saved two tables. Yeah, that's why we are using transactions. And then we are here trying to log him in. So this one we don't have yet, that's why we'll create it now. It's in our configuration parameters, and this value must be there. So I'll go to our web configuration, and as you can see here, there's a parameters, which is params, and params is in params.php. So I'll go to params.php and I say here this new value, and it must be 1 month. So it's 1 month, it's just so we remember the user for 1 month, for example. You can make it also less, what do you want. So now we can see here, if we can save the user and if we can save the connected external login, we save the tables, we commit the transaction, and then we try to log him in. If we cannot save this user or whatever we can't do, so we set the flash error, and then of course we can here transaction rollback. Yeah, and the same here if we cannot save the user. So because we are starting here transaction, so here get session set flash error. So we are not sending here actually the array, we are just sending the string. We don't have here this one. So, and here also, if something goes wrong, we can see the error message. So that's all. This part was actually for the case. If we don't have anything, if we don't have the user, if we don't have any connection, so it's exactly our case. Let's try. So I go to login and Facebook. I can see I could log in. So I'm in. Let's take a look what happens in our tables. So new user was inserted. I can see the username. I can see the email address. So this dummy password. This user has also the status 1, and everything is set as we want. Let's take a look what happened in our other table. So we can see here user ID is 17. It's our user. Source Facebook, and source ID, it's my user ID actually in Facebook. So now let's take a look what happens if I log out and log in again. So now I have the user and I have the connected external login in our out table. So in this case, it is this part. In this part, we are just sending the user to our update user info method and then log him in. Let's see what happens in our update user info. So we have here, actually we don't need, because we don't have here GitHub and so on. So that's why we just change it here. If the user was inserted, if user status is user inserted, it can mean that another user was creating an account with this email address and he typed, of course, the password. So we don't want to let him log in with the same password. So that's why I say password random string with 60. Then if the status was inserted, now we say it's active. So we say user password is now password, and we return user user save. So what happens here? It is possible that another user was creating the account in our Acme and he used another email address from another user. And he, as you remember, while registration you can also give the password. And he didn't activate his account. It means it can be another person. That's why we don't want to this person, to the person who created account, to log him in because he didn't activate his account. That's why we should reset the password. And then we also activate the account because we trust the Facebook, and then we save it. So what happens if the user has status blocked? If the user, so of course we can say it's else if status is user status blocked, just then we say return false, and at the end we say return true. So of course we can refactor it a bit. So we say just here, because this part is looks not so nice, so we just say here return. So then it means so if the user was blocked, we will not let him in. If the user has status activated, then we just log him in. If the user has status inserted, we activate the user and we reset the password. So now let's take a look what happens here. And here we of course need now if user can update his information, then we say log him in. And if we cannot, it means something wrong. For example, maybe he's blocked or something. And then we say here in a flash message, unable to log in user, unable to log in the user. So you can also put here the user was blocked or whatever you want. So now we can try, because we have already the records there. So we just go and log in. I can see I'm in. So in this case, I had already the status 1 and nothing happened. Now I try to log out and I try to here change my status to, for example, blocked. It was 2. Now I should get the error message. I can't log in. I go login and then Facebook. I can see here unable to log in the user. Now let's test and try if I had status inserted, and let's just here put this password. So now the status must be 1 after I log in, and the password must be updated also. So I go to login, I press on the Facebook, I'm in, I could log in. Now let's see what happened in our table. I can see the password was updated and status updated also to 1. Now we have only one case when we have the user, but this user didn't log in with his Facebook account. So we will change now a bit this part here. So we say here existing user, and we'll try to find this user. Find one with this email address. And in this case, so the email address is never empty. That's why we can just ignore it, because we are already checking it here. So here we can also actually say the error message here. We just say here, unable to log in the user, no email address provided. So here we check just if the user exists. So that's why we say if existing user. So now inside we just create the user exists. That's why we create a new connection to Facebook, to external login. So we say new out. It is new. It is existing user ID. Then we have here, I think we already created it, so I just copy paste it. And then we also here check if we can update the user info, because it is still possible that the user has status inserted or blocked. That's why we should also check it here. I say if this update user info for existing user, if it is possible, and if I can save this record, then we just log him in. So I copy, so this was our login. I'm logging in the existing user, so if I can update the user information and if I can save it, so I just log him in. Else I say you cannot log in, and I can just copy the error message here. So here we actually have three cases. The first case, if we have already external login information, then we just log him in. It means the user exists. And another two cases where we don't have the external login information and we either have user or don't have user. So let's now try. So first we can test where the email address is not empty. So I say here, for example, we are getting email from this kind of attribute. So I log in. So we can see unable to log in the user, no email address provided. So it works. We put it back. And now we just remove external login information. We go to our database. So I remove this for our user. And this is our third case. I log in with Facebook. I could log in. Now the new external login information must be created. I can see that's a new one for the same user, and the user is also there. So we didn't change anything. We can also test if the external login information were not there and the user was, for example, inserted. We just say inserted. So now it's the same case, but the update user info must also activate the user and change the password. So I also change the password here, so we see if it was changed. I log out and I log in again. So I could log in. I check first my user. So the user was activated, the password was reset, and also we can see here the new external login information. So this was login with the Facebook, and that's all for this lesson. That's all for this time. We have configured our project and added needed components to perform external login. In the next lessons, we will take a look how we can perform login using other providers. Thanks for watching. I wish you much fun with coding and good luck.